uh, DoorDash has this thing where you can shop for people. I don't like shopping. I hate it. Just to be honest with you. So I usually, if I go to the store, I'm in, I'm out, but it's a pain in the butt. It's because when you go in there, you have to scan all the items that people pick up with a bar. You have to scan the barcode, make sure you got the right items, put it. But when you go into the dollar store, you don't have any phone service. That's the first thing. So the first order I get yesterday, and I thought it was a gag, was a set of Durex Slim Fit condoms. And I was thinking, this is new, you know. I wonder what the tip's going to be. So I go to the shelf, I look, and there's nothing on the shelf. Everything in the dollar store has stuff on the shelf except for the rubbers. This shelf is clean out, you know, which tells me a lot about what's going on in society right now. So anyways, I messaged the guy back. I said, look, man, they're fresh out. I canceled the order. This is weird, like a weird start to the night, because usually if I have to do this, I do it all the way up to midnight. So this is a weird start right off the. Yeah, I definitely don't want the tip. No pun intended, right? But so I screwed up the order. Anyways, I'm walking past the counter, and I have to ask the lady, because the app says make sure that you ask the people in the store, like, if they have it. And I'm like, oh, you know. So I go up to the lady, and I'm like, listen, I'm here with DoorDash. Do you have any Durex Slim Fit condoms behind the shelf, perhaps? And they're like, oh, yeah, we do. And, of course, they're going to make a big deal out of it, right? So they make it, yeah, we've got condoms right here. This is where they are. And it's like, okay, well, they're not for me. Like, sure, they're not. So I pull out the red card thing. I get it, put it in the bag. And then I drive a mile, and the customer texts me and says, just leave them by my door. And I went from, I'm just telling you, this is a short story, but yeah, I don't even know what slim fit means. I don't know. I guess too tight or something. I mean, I'm not a big fan of those things anyways, but whatever. That's a discussion we don't need to get into. So I'm embarrassed, right? I'm totally embarrassed because there's people waiting in the line. This lady's, walking me through how to pay for someone else's condoms on DoorDash. So I'm thinking, can we just hurry this thing up? No, you still have to scan it. So she has to turn the box around, hold it out. I have to scan it with my phone and then put it in the bag. And then I'm leaving, and I just can't wait to get this order done. But I got to tell you guys, I went from being embarrassed to, by the time I dropped these things off, to feeling like proud. I feel like I did. You know how people say, if you're alive, you should contribute something to society. Like, don't be a loser, don't be a bum, or whatever. I really feel like I contributed something to society. I helped a person and got paid for it, possibly. If it's dudes, you have to give the DAP kind of thing anyways. But, I left it at the door. But I helped a person either not transmit a disease or bring a child into the world that they did not want. So that was my day yesterday. And then the rest of the day was weird. Like, ever since I turned that little thing on that says, yeah, I'll go shopping for people, it was a nightmare. So I can't, but now I can't wait to see what else people are going to have me shop for, because that kind of threw me back. And I'm hearing too, like today, that DoorDash just came out with a new thing where they partnered with 5 or 6 different department stores, and they're doing this, what is this thing? Klarni. Have you guys heard of the Klarni? So now people can buy food and condoms, whatever the hell they want, right? And they don't even have to pay for it now. They can pay for it later. This is a sure sign of a bad economy, I think. Not it's going to reset, so don't worry about it. Everything goes like this, but I think we're in this kind of that part right there. Because if I'm picking up condoms if I'm driving in DoorDash and I'm going to the store for a dude picking up condoms, he's paying me. By the way, do you know that these things are only $6? I did not know that. Usually decent condoms are pretty expensive. These things are like $6, a pretty good price. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, so can you imagine someone tipping you? This is where we are. Someone's at their house. They don't want to go to the store to buy their own condoms. They look up they look up DoorDash. They send you to the store to buy the condoms. They pay $7 extra for the condoms. And then now they can use Klarna. So they don't even have to pay for the condoms now. They can pay later. Listen, if you're like me and you're like living month to month, sometimes week to week, hell, sometimes day to day, do yourself a favor. If you're broke, be honest with yourself. You don't have to judge it unless you doom scroll and everybody's going to tell you you're a loser. Get off that shit. But if just practically, like if you don't have any money in your pocket, the worst thing that you could do, in my opinion, is finance a DoorDash. I think that's where we are, though. That's what's about to happen. And I'm telling you guys this just because this is a problem. If you can't buy stuff at the store, don't buy it. But you don't, like Klarna's out there. They have I looked up their surplus just a little while ago. It was like on the way home. They have $1 billion company. Yeah, $1 billion company. I don't know what their net is, but $1 billion company of people buying crap and paying for it later, including Taco Bell. Now it's going to be Taco Bell, McDonald's, 2 liters, condoms, things like that. So, yeah, if you're looking into DoorDash, I couldn't believe it, man. I think it's cool, though. I think for people that are in a tight spot, it's still, yeah, it's debt on top of debt on top of debt. It's a bad move. Like, worst case scenario, if you're poor, get a credit card for like an emergency account or whatever and use that and only use 30% of it. That's just what I've heard. But don't be using Klarna to get, stuff like that. But that's where we're going. Little Debbie's are $2. Not saying that I shop and buy Little Debbie's freely. I'm trying to quit. You guys remember like when Little Debbie's were like 50 cents? Now they're like $2, $2.25. Yet, just go. Let's freaking hear me here. Eggs are like $8. Okay. What else? Candy bars. Probably shouldn't eat those either. But they're like $3, even the small ones. Bread is, if you get the good bread, it's really expensive. But a pack of Slim Fit Durex, supposed to be high brand, I don't know, condoms. They're not Trojans, so I don't think they're the best anyways. They're only $6. What does that tell you? And the shelf was freaking empty from the top all the way across. They didn't have any of the stuff that was for adults is completely empty all the way to the back. And now you can make payments on it. All right. I'm just thinking like on an economic level, if you're not filthy rich right now, you're in trouble. We're all in trouble. I think we're all in trouble. But maybe just for a little bit, because I think the market was back up today. So, yeah, the stuff that is the crap food is always the cheapest. But yeah, I've been humbled a time or two in life, and this is one of those humbling moments. But this time, door dashing for rubbers for people, like I kind of felt proud. It was a low moment in my life, but I also felt really proud. Like I felt like I contributed to society in a sense. Someone made a conscious choice. And after all, we were talking about conscious exploration on this show, aren't we? So it was a good thing. It wasn't a bad thing. Just don't make payments on it. Don't use Klarna or any of that stuff. If you're starving, then I guess do it. But it probably wouldn't hurt to let your tummy growl for a little bit, just for a little bit. So tonight I wanted to get into the occult a little bit. But before we do that, I just want you guys to know I put this in the Discord, and a few people, I didn't think anybody would guess it, so I put it in the LTV Discord. I said, "Look, the first order that I got on DoorDash, you're never going to guess what it was, never." And people, like, right off the bat started getting close. I mean, immediately. First, it was like Taco Bell. Then the next guess was adult toys. This is where our heads are too, right? And I was like, damn, they got close. Adult diapers, intimate apparel for women. And I'm thinking, how do they know? I think we're all like on the same frequency. That's how people know, right? And then Purple Pencils comes in here and said, well, if you're close, it had to have been rubbers. And he was just playing. I said, you got it, man. Long are the days, like you don't have to anymore nowadays. Like if you're with your lady or whatever and things are popping, and you don't want to ruin the moment, you can just DoorDash it to your door. See, I'm still old school and traditional. The guys like me, we have to run. I'm not going to DoorDash to do that, by the way. Although it is super convenient if it's fast, but it's still weird for me. So I'm still going to go to the store, haul ass, go to the store if I don't have any, buy some condoms, rush back, and then hope that I did not ruin the moment. You got me stinking thinking. This is my question here is how did people go from what I said, you're never going to guess, and it was just an experiment, and then people went straight to the adult stuff. Which might be why, the whole shelf was empty. It is an industry that's never going to run out. It's never going to go out. It's kind of like bartending. No matter how bad the economy is, people are still going to drink. They're still going to buy rubbers, and I guess they're going to need milk. All right, so that was fun. If I have any more crazy moments, DoorDash, and I'm really thinking about doing this live because I keep having crazy moments. So if I can get one of those phone stands for the car, for the Silver Bullet Domec, I might start DoorDashing live and just see how all this goes. It's because it's about to get crazy. I wanted to get into some occult stuff tonight. Well, for one reason is I had zero time to prep for a show, but I was thinking about some stuff while I was working, and I have this text from Dion Fortune, which a lot of you really love Dion Fortune. I do. I think Dion Fortune was a pioneer in the occult movement, and she gets a lot of credit for, and for good reason, for her teachings on psychic self-defense, psychic development, the out-of-body experience, and magic, right? So she was one of the, in my opinion, best occultist of our time. But when she left the Golden Dawn, she created this society called the Society of the Inner Light, which is based out of England. Now, Dion Fortune's no longer with us, but the Society of the Inner Light it's still around. And she started putting out these pamphlets or memoirs to the Society of the Inner Light, and I don't know if it was Gareth Knight or who did it, but they ended up putting them all together, and it's just packed full of goodies. So if you can get this text, whether it be PDF or whether it's the physical book, it's called The Circuit of Force by Dion Fortune. So between February 1939 and August of 1940, she published a series of articles called The Circuit of Force. Now, this was monthly installments that she put in the Inner Light magazine. But the series was complete by the time the magazine ceased publication as a result of wartime paper rationing. Yeah. I can't get it out of my head. I'm trying to get it out of my head, actually. Oh, by the way, when I went to so I worked late into the night, and you think that a lot of the reasons why some people in certain cities don't do like Uber, DoorDash, and all this stuff is because they think it's too busy or I won't get any work. Bullcrap. People do not want to leave their house for nothing. When I went to McDonald's to pick up an order, there were 6 people standing there, like waiting on DoorDash orders, and it was still busy in a little bitty town in Arkansas. So I can only imagine what it's like in a big city. So I guess if you need some extra cash, it's not a bad idea. But I did ask one of the guys in there. I forgot to tell you this. I said, "Hey man, did you turn that thing on your app that has to do with shopping? Because I don't like shopping. I feel when I shop, my chest burns. Like I can feel like I just can't wait to get out of there, get what I need to get, and get out. So to have to like really pick through stuff for other people, it was challenging me. But I asked the guy at McDonald's. I said, "What's the weirdest thing you ever got?" He said, "Oh," he knew right off the bat too. He was like, "Wait, you had to buy condoms for somebody, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did. I had to buy condoms." I said, "This is weird." So between 6 of us waiting to pick up orders for people at McDonald's, and other people are like ordering condoms. He said, "Wait till you have to go into a store and buy a pregnancy test for something." Now, ladies, I'm just asking you, would you DoorDash a pregnancy test to have someone bring it to you? I don't mind dropping off food for people. That's not a big deal, but that's a big moment. Unless I guess you would if it was like a secret thing or you were worried you were pregnant, I guess, right? But would you still do that? I'm just curious. Maybe I'm too old school and too traditional to like think that that's crazy or something. Maybe. But he says it happens all the time. Nancy says no. I wasn't eating McDonald's. I was picking orders up. Depends on who I thought the father was. That makes sense. Okay. So if you're like trying to keep it secret or something, it would be a good idea. Like, hey, drop it off at my door. Wait till the DoorDash driver leaves. Everybody does that, by the way. They'll wait till the DoorDash driver leaves, and then they'll look around, open the door real quick, grab their stuff, get in the house. So I'll have more dashing stories for you guys later. So Dion Fortune's general theme was the recovery and practical application of what she called the lost secrets of the West. And so she cast her net pretty wide, from Tantra yoga to spiritual development circles, from sexual conventions in current societies to ceremonial magic. So, and she also wrote about the magical battle of Britain, too. So keep in mind that a lot of this text that Gareth Knight put together has to do with what she wrote in those books. And we're going to go through it. It's some good stuff. What's up? Oh, yeah, by the way, what's up, El Naturel? Grant gets out. Rice, beans, cheap proteins, and veggies. You probably come out healthier than most people. I forgot to say hey to Bryce, Nancy, Sudi. Anybody else I forgot to say hi to? I'm sorry. Ain Sof. What's up? Let's get into this. So it's not easy to convey Eastern thoughts to Western readers because the dictionary equivalent of the terms employed is far from being their significance in mystical thought. It's well known to those who have penetrated beyond the outer court in these matters that there is a special use of language, a double entendre, as it were, which is made use of whenever questions of practical procedure are under discussion. Let the once born should discover the shortcuts to the secret places of the soul. The real question is this stuff still secret? How much do we know about it today? It is both right and necessary that this precaution should be used, and it will be observed in these pages for these shortcuts are effectual psychological devices and can be made use of by the uneducated. I think that's supposed to say uneducated, as well as, no, I take that back. It says by the undedicated and the dedicated. And if they are employed by persons with unpurified and undisciplined minds, this can prove unfortunate for others as well as themselves. Yeah, you know what, man? Like, Dion Fortune was a real stickler about that. I don't think, like, if she was around, I don't know about now, but one of the biggest things that the Society of the Inner Light, I think, asked, and I remember looking up their, like, if you were to join their secret society or whatever, one of the biggest things that they were worried about is like, were you on drugs? Have you ever did drugs? It's almost like you were being examined to try out for the police or something. Have you ever did drugs? Have you ever lied to anybody? Do you drink alcohol? What about psychedelics? Do you eat crap food? This is the kind of things that they would kind of warn you against. So I would be the last to deny to an adult the right to burn his own fingers if he so desires. This is why I love Dion Fortune. She'll tell you, you're probably going to screw yourself up doing this, but I don't think it's right for me not to give you the information. But I think it's best to withhold from him the means of raising conflagrations in other folk. Another difficulty in the way of conveying Eastern thought to Western lies in the fact that the attitudes towards life of East and West is entirely different. I wonder if we could say that now. It is strikingly illustrated by the sacred buildings in the two hemispheres. Just look at how the buildings are different. In the West, the central emblem commemorates suffering. In the East, it commemorates joy. The men and women conditioned to these emblems naturally evaluate the experiences of life differently. As Kipling truly said, the wildest dreams of Q are the facts of Kathmandu and the crimes of Clapham, Chast, and Martaban. So the best approach to Eastern thought is through a classical education. The Greek and the Hindu would have no difficulty in understanding each other. Each has the same concept of nature and the same regard for asceticism as a means to an end and not as an end in itself. Eastern thought, however, has penetrated far more deeply into natural religion than the Greeks had the capacity to do. And the mysteries of Dionysus and Ceres are but pale shadows of their Eastern prototypes. And then she goes on because this is all her like philosophy, East to West stuff. But so there's another fact which thou known to specialists along this line of study is unrealized by the majority of writers on mysticism and consequently by the majority of their readers. It will no doubt be a surprise to many to learn that Indian initiates believe that the inspiration of their mysteries came originally from Egypt. I did not know that. Is she right about that? The relevant data may be found in the works of Sir John Woodruff or Arthur Avalon. And there's some kind of text that she's bringing up here called the Principles of Tantra. So it follows then that those who have been initiated in the Western esoteric tradition and have taken those grades that draw their inspiration from Greece and Egypt, in addition to the better-known alchemical grades, will have no difficulty in understanding much in Eastern thought that is obscure or even obscene to the ordinary student. Okay. Well, let's go. So, having unburdened myself of these preliminary explanations and made my position clear, I hate when she does this. I guess back then, like, because this was back in the 30s, right? So, and she was a woman, a woman occultist who wrote books that mostly dudes are reading. So she's like constantly explaining herself, which I don't think she needs to do, but bothers me a little bit. So having unburdened myself of these preliminary explanations and made my position clear, if that is ever possible in dealing with the subject of yoga, I will now endeavor to show the manner in which the Western initiate can link up his knowledge with the Eastern methods and thereby enrich both his theory and practice. The uninitiated have no means of achieving this unification because, even were the necessary keys given to them, the necessary trained and dedicated capacity is lacking. Having no wish to cause the unenlightened to blaspheme, I will pursue the traditional method of using the language of the mysteries, clear to those who possess the keys, obscure to those who do not. Ooh. So she's probably going to hide some stuff in here, which we'll figure it out. Depends on who the father was. Guys still have it hard, don't you? All right. It must always be borne in mind that the clue to all these mysteries is to be sought in the tree of life. That makes most people run for the hills, by the way. As soon as you pull up the tree of life, people are like, they run for the hills. But understand the significance of the tree. Arrange the symbols you're working with in the correct manner upon it, and all will be clear, and you can work out your sum. Equate the danda with the central pillar, and the lotuses with the sephron, and the bisections of the past thereon, and you have the necessary bilingual dictionary at your disposal, if you know how to use it. So much for the practical side of this matter, but not for the philosophy. So it must be realized that there are two broad types of yoga, the kind that leads on to sadhana, the higher states of consciousness, and the one that aims at conferring the siddhis, or magical powers. The kind that is exported to the West is the former. The more spiritual kind, because it is the more acceptable to the aesthetic Christian ideal, whereas the other, which is really nature worship, naked and unashamed, though it would have appealed to the Greeks, would no doubt rouse the modern analogs of King Pentheus to fury. And if you don't think, listen, if you don't think that there's still a polarity between, which I find sad these days, but if you don't think there's still a polarity between Christians and pagan thought and this whole religious war thing, it's still here. I mean, what they did to Billy Carson was brutal. I knew the guy made mistakes, like Billy, but when he started attacking what Christians were talking about, they ripped him apart. That guy did. After I had Juan on the show, went and listened to I guess the debate or whatever. It doesn't mean crap to me either way. But what I did take notice is that the duality of the two are still here. It's 2025, and these people still, when you attack one or the other, they want to just rip each other apart. And they're still going after Billy. They're still doing episodes about how he messed up and trying to call him out and stuff, which is, to me, it's like kicking a man when he's down, but I guess they're doing it for traffic reasons. I don't know. Now, the only place in the Western world where the siddhis are seen is in the spiritual movement, where the circle is the undeveloped analog of the chakra. So it's easy to see what happens in the, quote, circle. The component members pool their psychic forces and so provide the raw material for the phenomena. No one quite knows what they're doing, nor why they are doing it, but they find that if they do certain things, they get certain results. And if they neglect to do them, they do not get results. They also know by experience that the phenomena of greater intensity occurs in the presence of certain persons which are absent in their absence. So the conclusion being reasonably drawn that some persons are more gifted by nature in these matters than others, but very little is known concerning the causation of this gift, which is either present or absent in a given individual. Though the fact of its observation in every conceivable gradation, from the most powerful to the most feeble in different individuals, and its variation in strength and the same individual point to it being a thing which ought to respond to cultivation if we understood its nature. So some people are born with abilities to channel this energy better. They just are. And I personally believe, I don't think it's a man or woman thing. I personally believe it's where someone is spiritually after they've reincarnated. So whatever they did in their past life, they might have went through certain spiritual stuff in their past life, which led them to doing it in this life. And so they naturally, I guess, gel with it better. Or they get on that frequency better. So it has often been alleged that the marvels reported of Indian yogis are achieved by means of mass hypnosis. That the yogi does not really float in the air unsupported. He lies comfortably on the ground and by the power of his mind causes his audience to think they see him floating in the air. For the record, I've never seen anybody, nor have I talked to anybody that has seen levitation for real. I have talked to one person, I think Greg Doyle, who is an astral traveler, said that he felt beings lifting him up when he left his body, but he found that his body was levitating. To me, it's like Bigfoot. Man, I've got to see it or experience it to believe it. I don't think the body can levitate. Maybe it could, but that's definitely one of those things like I just cannot believe until I see it. But anyways, she's saying that they don't really levitate. It's possible that they lie on the ground and by the power of their mind causes the audience to think that they see him floating. I'm not in a position to argue this point, having no firsthand acquaintance with the yogis, but I know, however, that physical phenomena in the West are highly suspect, and I know that mediums, who for long have been regarded as most convincing, have with painful frequency been shown up in the end. It may be that all non-fraudulent psychic phenomena are of the hypnotic and auto-hypnotic order. I do not know and have no opinion on the subject, preferring to keep an open mind in the present state of my knowledge. But it's quite certain that much of the so-called supernormal is achieved by means of an applied psychology of which the West is utterly and entirely ignorant, and this, to me, is the most interesting part of it. Remember, she wrote this in the 30s. The word yoga itself gives us a clue to the nature of the activities it denominates. It is derived from the root yug and implies a joining, conjunction, or union. The same root appears in the word yoke and conjugal. Thus, it may be taken that yoga is a method of achieving union, and so it is generally defined, but union with what? This is where we need to be careful and precise, for we can easily go astray. It is taken for granted by the Western students of yoga who have to accept that what is given them at second and third hand in the popular books on the subject, that the union aimed at this union is with God. But this, I think, would be agreed by all the schools of yoga. But what the Western students do not realize is that the Hindu recognizes not more than one God, but more than one aspect of God and more than one aspect of God's being. That means the union aimed at by the devotee may be with God as the great unmanifest, or it may be with God made manifest in nature. Now, this latter aspect of the Godhead is indicated in Eastern thought as the goddess, or the spouse of God, or the Shakti, or female aspect of the Godhead. I don't think any Orthodox people want to hear that. But this idea is not as alien to Western thought as the uninformed might think. For Mathers points out in his introductory essay to his translation of the Kabbalah Unveiled, the word Elohim is a feminine noun with a masculine plural termination. Is it? It's a masculine plural, but feminine noun. That has always confused the hell out of me. This teaching at first sight crudely anthropomorphic indicates, when understood in its deeper mystical sense, which is the only sense in which it can be understood, that the universe is strung between two poles of manifestation in the form of a magnetic field of interacting force. Do you guys understand that? Does that make sense to you? What's up, Ari? Thanks for the 1999, brother. The great heretic hunt is still on and most likely will only get worse the way things are going. Well, look, here's the thing, all right? If you want to increase your knowledge, or if you want to, this is only my opinion, take it or leave it, but like if you want to grow and change, but one of the dumbest things I've ever heard is people don't change. Well, if you're a real spiritual person, you actually do change, and that's the whole idea, is to grow and change. But the worst thing that you can do is attack someone else's belief. Like, everyone's belief is sacred, right? To them, whatever it is. If you don't agree with something, you can have a debate, but let's say, for instance, if you believe that some of the Christian texts are allegory and they're not literal, so like it's not literal history, it's not orthodox literal history, whatever, then you could have a debate and say, I don't believe that this is literal history, and just talk it out. You don't have to get all up in your feelings. But when you go straight after Christians and say, your God is narcissistic and he's a killer, and Jesus never died on the cross, and all this other stuff, and you're just attacking them, calling them stupid or whatever. That's not a wise thing to do, like to ever go after what anybody thinks is sacred. Because Orthodox Christians especially, they have people that, will go after you, and now you're in a war. Now you're not even having a discussion. You're not figuring nothing out. So I think Billy knew better than that. And, like I said, the truth is going to come out. We need people to check us. I think we need people to go and say, hey, man, this stuff that you're talking about, like, you need to check its sources and make sure that it's right. And if you don't know, say, I don't know. I don't understand why that's so hard. We need to get away from this damn marketing idea where people have to market themselves as experts and authorities and things, and they have to focus all of their energy on that image instead of like focusing their energy on finding the truth. It's just, you could just see it. And I don't know why they don't think people can see it. I can see it. I know you can. So I don't know, what I'm saying is I don't know why people don't realize, or because some content creators don't realize that people aren't stupid. They know when you're trying to finesse them. So stop doing it. Just stop it. It's annoying. All right. Elohim. Okay, so moreover, and this is an important clue, it was the Elohim who are reported as responsible for the act of creation recorded in the first chapter of Genesis, and created everything, male and female, and ended the act by saying, let us create man in our image and likeness. Male and female created he them. So here we see clearly indicated the primary esoteric idea that manifestation always takes place by the means of the pairs of opposites, in this case symbolized as male and female. In fact, the prevalence of the use of the sexual symbolism has bewildered many students who have sought to go to the fountainhead in this field of study. And since it is there, however, and unavoidable, we must accept it and make the best of it, though not necessarily taking it at face value. So we meet the same symbolism in Greek, the Egyptian, the Norse, and the Celtic pantheons. In fact, we meet with it wherever men look upon nature as the manifesting Godhead, and as such hold it holy, and also by implication esteem the corresponding factors in themselves to be holy. This is an attitude so different from that of the average Westerner, who is usually Christian in outlook, even if not in action, and who has been taught to worship God in his aspect of the unmanifest only. Now think about what she's saying here. Pretty true, right? This is an attitude, okay, so the Christian in outlook, even if not in action, that's kind of a stab at Christians right there that she did, and who has been taught to worship God in his aspect of the unmanifest only, that he has no concept at all of what is meant, but at the same time disagrees with it utterly, believing that to be sinful, which the East believes to be sacred. So if the East regarded it as the West regards it, it would undoubtedly be sinful. But this is exactly what the East does not do. So it may be said in brief that it is impossible for anyone who is at war with himself to practice yoga, because there's no union between the unmanifest and the manifest. Either you're worshiping something that you can't see that is not around, or you're worshiping nature. And that is pretty much the West and the East, or I would even say in a lot of terms when you see pagans and Christians go at it. But what Dion's saying is God is both, the union of both. So he must follow the example of the great Roman who said, I reckon nothing human alien to me. So it's pretty much agreed, though, by all who have practical experience in this field, that the things of the higher mysticism can only be conceived of by means of symbols, a sort of algebra of the soul. Man, that is a good way that she puts it there, because it is like when you start, working with your higher self, it seems like an algebra equation, because you're constantly using symbols to talk to it back and forth. And the processes of yoga are no exception to this truth. By means of symbolism, they are conceived of and handled. The comprehensive glyphs in the east corresponding to the tree of life in the west is of a man seated cross-legged in meditation with the 7 lotuses or chakras displayed as 7 discs placed one above the other up the central line of the body. The basal one approximately corresponding with the base of the spine, and the highest one situated immediately over the head, thus entirely agreeing with the allocation of the central pillar of the tree of life, providing the intersection of the paths are added to the Sephirah. You have to know a little bit about the tree of life to kind of understand this, or at least like kind of know the tree, though. Damn, it's an hour gone by quick. So that these lotuses or chakras and the nerves connecting them actually exist anatomically. No initiated yogi believes, but experience proves that there are centers and channels of magnetic energy in the etheric double that can be located by using the indicated points in the physical body as markers. Yeah, because I've never and I've talked about this before, I've never felt spinning things in my body. I've felt, especially when doing the middle pillar or whatever, I've felt certain sensations in those energy centers, but, never seen a chakra on an x-ray or anything like that. The practitioner of this method visualizes in his imagination, not his physical body, but his etheric double. And where he concentrates his attention, the magnetic force flows and concentrates itself. And as these centers roughly correspond to the endocrine organs, remember we talked about that before, these centers correspond to the endocrine organs, far-reaching physical implications may be surmised. So certainly there must be changes in the blood as one or another of these ductless glands is stimulated into pouring out its secretions. And something else I forgot to mention too in the middle pillar stuff is two rituals that you could do, 2 ceremonies that you can do. You don't have to do ceremonies, but you could study them and come up with your own thing if you want. 1, the middle pillar, and 2, the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram. Supposedly, and I've seen this too, supposedly helps you stay younger. It kind of cleanses you on a cellular level. I know that sounds crazy. I know. But if you really study sacred geometry, frequency, biogeometry, all of these things, and look at how this could actually work and how it could affect things on a cellular level, and we also know by Dr. Joe Dispenza just how powerful the placebo is too, that communication with the higher self using symbols, that biogeometry, all of that stuff working together could actually do something alchemical to you energetically. And that's one of the biggest secrets that these orders don't put in any of their books, because they believe that. And I have seen people and told you guys that I've met people that were incredibly young looking for their age, but they were adepts too. So let's see. What are y'all talking about? I've walked both the Christian world and the magician's path, and one thing I've realized is that pagans and Christians both share the same values. And yeah, they do. It's crazy to watch them go at it, man. They'll go at each other. All right, so these centers roughly correspond to the endocrine organs. Far-reaching physical implications may be surmised. Certainly there must be changes in the blood as one or another of the ductless glands is stimulated into pouring out its secretions. So she's hinting at stuff right there, like she said she would. We probably have here the secret of rejuvenation. What did I just tell you? These different chakras or centers are held to correspond to different levels of consciousness and the corresponding planes of manifestation. Now, this is taught in Kabbalah, but at any rate, in reasoning by analogy, I presume it to be the same in the East, and that if a given center is awake and functioning, it will form a channel of ingress or egress onto the corresponding inner plane. What What time is it? The Muladhara, the base of the spine, is held to be the basal chakra of all, from whence the slumbering force of the Kundalini is called up. And that is it by that force. And that alone, that all the other chakras are vivified. And with this, the Kabbalist would agree, equating the Muladhara lotus with the Sephra Malkuth, which, be it remembered, is not the physical earth, but the sphere of the elements. And therein is the important key to Kabbalistic thought. So when you do the middle pillar and stuff, or you look into those texts, they'll have the earth at your feet. But a lot of people know where it actually is, and the elements too. And it's at the base of the spine. And a lot of people already know this too. When you're studying alchemy, the laboratory is many things in alchemy. It can be an actual laboratory where you do work, but it's also your body. The fires in your body and the things that are happening in your body are also a laboratory. And those laws work both in the laboratory with the little lab and Bunsen burners and in the body. Same. All right. Let's see. Okay. Not the physical earth, but the sphere of the elements, and therein is the important key. Okay. So bearing in mind the fact that the microcosm is the mirror of the macrocosm, let us remember that there must be a sphere of the elements in man, and that it is not his physical body that is his Malkuth, but his etheric double. So we must therefore look for 4 elemental factors in man, and I use the term generically to include woman also. So these 4 factors being, like the elements, 2 of them active, a subtle and dense, and 2 of them passive, also a subtle and a dense. And from this fact, we deduce the law of alternating polarities, both up the planes and in function. This equates with the Eastern Ida and Pingala, or the sun and the moon forces, and everything that is taught in yoga with regard to Ida and Pingala can be applied to the law of alternating polarities. It has truly been said that the perfect marriage does not consist of the halves of a single whole, but of the 4 quarters. Oof. Interesting. So she's getting into some deep secrets here, or used to be deep secrets. But we're already at the top of the hour, so we got to take a music break. I'm going to grab a drink, too. I hadn't had a drink in like a freaking 3 hours or something like that. What's up, Word Salad? What's up, Anna? 3 minutes tops, and then the next part that we're going to get into here is the overcrowded monkey house. What do you think that's about? I love Dion Fortune. I'll try to keep all this stuff too and later put it all together into one big audio book like I did Psychic Self-Defense. But in my opinion, Dion Fortune's seriously like one of the best occultists to read, because she's not like, she gives away really good info and she's not too damn snooty about stuff. The only thing that I kind of don't like about her is she over explains a lot of stuff that I don't think she needs to. What am I doing here? Oh, yeah. Music break. Grab a drink. We'll be back like 3 minutes here.
Should be
truth. I guess it don't seem wrong if it ain't being done to you. You got a lot to learn. You can't keep it down. When the word gets in the wind, then it's bound to blow back around. That's right. Good stuff there, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Maybe I'm a little old school, but that's really good stuff. All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm trying to do a new thing where, like, just keep it radio style and play music and stuff on the breaks. So, like, if you guys like certain songs or whatever, you can drop in the Discord. And if YouTube lets me play them without giving me the old slap, I'll play them, you know. I remember, like, when that dude was so young when he was doing that. Can you imagine? He's not even 20 years old when he was doing that. All right, so we're going to get back into this text. The monkey house. Look, I'm telling you guys, if you want to learn what magic and the occult's like all about, you can't go wrong with Dion Fortune. I think, and I'm not just saying this too, like when you read a lot of the dudes that wrote about magic and astral travel and stuff, especially the magicians that talked about magic and astral travel, a lot of the dudes were really, man, I don't know how to explain it. Like they had like this arrogant kind of, you know, I don't even know what the word for it. Feel when you read the stuff. They would hide stuff on purpose, things like that. And then Dion Fortune would just smack people in the face. Like, no, here's what they're talking about. I don't think the Society of the Inner Light would take me in because I've partied too much. I'm guilty of that. Like, I could party at any moment. It could just happen, you know. All right. So the monkey house. Now, this is still the circuit of force, okay? Now, what she's saying is, for a further understanding of our subject matter, that we need to understand, but we must remember that just as the physical body builds itself up out of this inert substances of the physical plane, so each of the subtler bodies renews its substance from the corresponding level of the subtle planes. So just as our physical bodies come from matter and dust and dirt and all that stuff, the subtle body comes from the subtle planes. And some of you already know, based on your conscious exploration, that those planes exist. Okay? So each of the subtler bodies renews its substance from the corresponding level of the subtler planes. And there is a constant subtle psychic metabolism going on, a constant in-breathing and out-breathing on every plane. Now, if this is impeded, the corresponding level of being becomes unhealthy. So just alone by tapping into your energy, I guess some people call that your circadian rhythm, which is a form of it too. But you can tap into this like ritually too, or in your meditations, and kind of heal your body as well too. So if it is entirely cut off, that level will die, and the levels below it are cut off from the central directing guidance. This no doubt accounts for certain forms of insanity. So you remember when we were talking about how people have these like Kundalini experiences, quote Kundalini experiences, and they start going crazy. So this in-breathing and out-breathing appears to be readily susceptible to regulation by the mind. It is, in fact, normally controlled by the mental attitude. This unquestionably explains the forms of psychoneurosis attributed to what Freud calls repression, but which might equally aptly be termed constriction. For a self-repressive mental attitude undoubtedly restricts the subtle bodies, just as the old-fashioned wasp-waisted corsets restricted all the vital activities of their proud victims and produced the vapors. I don't know what is she talking about she's talking about the thing that women used to wear where they would cinch up their waist, right? That looked terrible. I don't know why dudes or anybody thought that was attractive back then. I think that's what she's talking about. What vapors is she talking about, though? Anybody know? Wasp-waisted corsets restricted all the vital activities of their proud victims and produced the vapors. Oh, man, people had fainting fits and green sickness, I guess. Huh. Really? That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's stupid anyways. Like, why would you do that? Is that what she's talking about, ladies? I could be wrong. I'm making sure I'm right about that. If I'm I'm not going to wear anything that's going to make me pass out. I don't know why a woman would. So, could we be brought to accept the natural attitude of the mind towards nature and its processes? We should soon see the last of our mental and emotional anemias, rickets, and scurvy go away. A well-known writer once stated that when he looked upon the monkeys at the zoo in their old cages, he thought them the nastiest of created beings. But when he saw them after they had been transferred to their new home on the open-air terraces, he revised his opinion. So the same might be said of the civilized man's subconscious mind, explored with such thoroughness by the psychoanalytical schools of thought. Dr. Trotter, in his epoch-making book on the instincts of the herd and peace and war, remarks that Freudians seem altogether too ready to accept the present repressive conditions of emotional life as standard and unalterable, and to direct all their patients to the Procust's bed of custom and convention, and no one seems to be found bold enough to put them on trial or the conditions that give rise to so much mental and social misery and inquire whether they are inevitable and unalterable. Well, we're still doing that. I was listening to that podcast that Bryce put in the Discord, and that guy's right, man. When people talk about, especially emotions, it's like, oh, you need to have emotional consistency or whatever. So that means you have to have control of your outbursts, but also it should be a happy medium of like where you're not repressing emotions either, which I still say this day, man. I don't give a damn who's talking. If it's dudes, girls, whatever, people trying to tell you how to live, who to be, it's stupid. If you repress anything that has an influx, like an outflow and inflow, if you repress any of that, it'll kill you. And if you don't believe me, try it with digestion. Don't pee or poo. See what happens to you. Try it with breathing. Breathe in, but don't breathe out. See what happens. Try it with your mind. Take in all of the stimulation and don't let it out. Don't create or expand your energy and see what happens. Same thing with emotions. If you take in a lot of trauma and you don't heal it, or if something makes you angry and you don't express it, there is a thing as justified anger, by the way. It's just stupid, man. If you repress your emotions, and I know this because it's affected my body in unhealthy ways that I wish that I'm still trying to heal today, because I thought I had to be super like stoic about everything and that's not even stoicism, by the way. That's just what I thought stoicism was, and just never express my emotions. It'd be like Spock all the time. Yeah, it caused a shitstorm in my body. So anyways, one is only to wade through the case histories of the 4 stout volumes of Havoc Ellis, The Psychology of Sex, to realize that one is studying the natural history of an overcrowded monkey house. Our purpose, however, is not at the moment to study the remedial possibilities offered by yoga to sick minds, though this is a very fruitful field awaiting exploration. I want here to consider the possibilities of yoga for the development of normal minds into superminds. For just as Freud found that the study of pathological mental processes threw light on normal ones, as might be expected in our caged monkey house of civilization, so we may find that the study of the methods of training that develop supernormal minds may throw light on the healing of abnormal ones. I hope so, man. Because right now, there's not a lot of healing going on, the way I look at things. A lot of people are isolating themselves, too, nowadays. And this was written in the 30s, but I still think it's true in 2025. If you meet somebody that needs healed, or it's, quote, toxic, or whatever you call them, of course, you're not supposed to, like, take them in and let them get all up in your energy and make them a part of your life in a way that's going to hurt you. But a lot of the stuff on the internet is just like, cut them off, get rid of them. So where the hell are they going to go? Who's going to heal them people? Who's going to help heal them? Well, that's their responsibility. Yeah, it's their responsibility, but humans heal other humans. Humans hurt humans too, but we also heal each other too. Don't forget that. So first and foremost, it must be realized that just as an unnatural attitudes towards life is the basic cause of the functional psychopathologies, so a similar attitude renders the development of the mind by yoga quite impossible, because the energies that are to produce the development are drawn from the Sephra Malkuth, or the sphere of the elements, the 4-petaled Muladhara lotus, same thing. This inhibits life at this level by repressive attitude, and the Kundalini cannot rise. Let life flow freely, and the way opens for the sublimation of the Kundalini. Man, however, being essentially a social animal, incapable of existing alone and suffering severe discomfort from the disapproval of his fellows, it follows that direct action in the way of a return to nature is not always possible. Compromises have to be made. Alternative routes have to be found, because the cost of direct action is too high once the clouds are off the soul. Many forms of compromise become possible, which make life livable when otherwise it would be unbearable. It is possible to twist a rope, and quite a satisfactory rope, out of a number of short strands, and where all the factors necessary to a balanced diet do not exist in one dish, to avail oneself of the psychological equivalent of dietary supplements. That's a long, see, I hate when she does, that's a long freaking way to say, hey, if you're out of whack, you can get back in whack. Just take supplements, or there are shortcuts you can take. That's it. That's all you got to say. Psychologically as well, too. The most effective and practical alternative route for the bypassing of direct action is to be found in ritual performed with knowledge, wherein each member of the ritual team works with true magical power, knowing the meaning of the symbols employed. Well, that scared a lot of people, didn't it? As soon as I said true magical power, everybody's like, some people's like, oh, Satan. So true magical power, knowing the meaning of the symbols employed, and that the personal forces of each officiant have to act siphon-like for the bringing through of the corresponding cosmic forces. This being achieved with genuine power and understanding by those working the ritual. The onlookers can participate each according to his or her need if they have the necessary knowledge, and even if, from force of circumstances, this must be withheld, nevertheless they are not sent empty away, for the ritual, couched in terms of primordial symbolism, speaks to their condition. Do you know what she just said right there? It's a lot of gobbledygook for some people, but basically what she's saying is so if you have someone like doing a ceremony or whatever, she did just prove a lot of conspiracy theorists right too. And then you have other people that join the ceremony and they don't understand the power of the symbols or what they really mean and the corresponding forces that are coming through those symbols. It will still affect those people that are there. Regardless, their subconscious is still going to take it in. So this is where we get into that whole controversial subject of white magic, black magic, whatever, all that stuff you want to talk about. But there is something to this on a dark level too that you need to be aware of. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a Super Bowl thing, you know, the halftime show at the Super Bowl, which obviously has a lot of symbolism in it every year and thousands of people watch it. But this also kind of works, and corporations have known this since the beginning of time, it seems like. It also works in marketing. You know, a lot of the things that you see and the symbols that they use and things like that, I know you're aware of this, but it's still good to talk about it every now and then, are impressing upon your subconscious. For what reasons? That's all you got to ask yourself. If you ever want to know like what's good or what's bad, right? For what reasons are these people impressing symbols that correspond to certain higher egregoric powers into my subconscious? Why are they doing it? Are they doing it because they want me to buy their product? Or are they doing it because they want me to heal or awaken? 90% of the time, if you're finding it on the TV or your phone or somewhere else, they're doing it, I wouldn't call it nefarious, but for their own baneful reasons. But if you take, let's say, like if you take a group of people that really care about each other, and a few people, I guess, are a little bit more advanced than others, and they want to help you heal, that's a different thing. But I'll say this too. It always should be a matter of choice. If anybody's going to impress anything upon your subconscious, it's your choice to take it in or not. And a lot of times, and I don't mean by just saying, I wall myself off, I'm not going to take this stuff in. It doesn't really work like that, especially if you're taking it in with your senses. But they should give you that choice. So turn your phone off. There's your choice. Or, you know, skip the commercial. It's crazy too, man. I remember when I got into tech, all the big softwares that these tech companies were using, they also used God names and symbol names for their softwares and stuff. So more people know about this than they talk about, though. Let's see. So the ritual couched in terms of primordial symbolism speaks to their condition. Yeah. So in the East, the home of yoga, in addition to the meditations on the chakras, there are the rituals of the chakras. In the West, these are represented by the mystery rites of such centers as Eleusis and Memphis, and the same factors, unrecognized and imperfectly realized, come out in modern ballroom dancing. That's cool. Were the psychology of these things understood and their technique adapted to modern needs, we should have a most valuable contribution to the, what is this word? Armamentarium of psychotherapy, as well as calisthenics of the mind. Well, yeah, you could use dancing too. I mean, the Sufis did. From the practical point of view, however, the matter is far from simple in Western countries, where such things receive neither acknowledgement nor sympathy. How then can the bypass be built? When every field is plastered with notices announcing that trespassers will be persecuted, as the small boy so aptly paraphrased the notice. In other words, all of this stuff that, especially back in the 30s, all of this knowledge was kind of blocked off, or you weren't allowed to learn these things, or it was secret, you know. So ritual, with its symbolic enactment of the cosmic drama, can go a long way but cannot go the whole way. It can provide dietary supplements that will enable the undernourished to keep alive, but it will not give the bounding energy of real health. As a means to an end, the symbolic ritual is admirable. As an end in itself, it is a compromise and a makeshift, better than nothing, but not the genuine article. It cannot, moreover, be worked satisfactorily by those who themselves are obliged to rely on substitutes for life in its fullness. Those who possess fullness of life can mediate to others by means of ritual. But if they themselves suffer from restriction or inhibition of life force, they can no more mediate the cosmic life to those for whose benefit they work a ritual than a starving mother can feed her baby. I wonder if that works for, because most people are doing their own stuff now. I don't think a lot of people are going to find hierophants and stuff. But I wonder if that works for all of the people that are doing psychedelics nowadays, right? What's up, Lunar Sparkles? And you know what I mean? Like, there's a whole bunch of shamans nowadays. And a whole lot of people doing ceremonies like ayahuasca, things like that. I think you need to be careful about. I'm not trying to scare you. If someone's accredited and they got a lot of good feedback, go do a ceremony with them or something. But just because someone says they're a shaman doesn't mean you should follow in their footsteps or whatever. That stuff goes straight to the deep. Think about that. DMT, ayahuasca, ibogaine, anything like that. You better make damn sure you're with good people if you're doing that, because it does. It goes straight to the deep. It is necessary that those who work the rite should themselves know the full function of the four quarters. Now, she's not talking about shamanism here. She's talking about ceremonial magic. And I write for those who are so fortunately situated as to be able to achieve this, for they are the true priesthood of nature. I would say to them that the sacramental attitude is the key to life, a sacrament being the outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual power. Ritual, we know, is action, and action becomes ritual when performed with intention. That is a very small but profound statement. Think about that. Ritual, we know, is action, and action becomes ritual when it's performed with intention. This is what I mean when I say, like, people do ritual all the time. You could say, I practice ritual this or ritual that, and you're looked at like you're Satan or something. And yet you can sit back and see what people do ritually with intention every single day. It's no different. So I've pointed out elsewhere in my writings on magic, the contacts with the cosmic forces are picked up mentally by means of the use of symbols on which the imagination dwells, thus building them on the astral. The mind has to be conditioned, quote, conditioned, to any given abstract symbol before it can be influenced by it. And this conditioning, did y'all hear that? And this conditioning is achieved by presenting the symbol to the mind under impressive ritualistic circumstances so that it is forever after associated in the mind with the emotion of the moment and will consequently call up the emotion whenever it is subsequently seen. Now, that's very important what she just said, though. The mind has to be conditioned. I know all you guys probably hate when I repeat stuff, but I want you to think about this. Everything that's happened in your life, every trauma that you have and every good thing that you have, the mind has to be conditioned to any given abstract symbol before it can be influenced by it. So symbols do have power to the unconscious, but the more you're conditioned by the symbol, the more power it has, right? And this conditioning is achieved by presenting the symbol to the mind under impressive ritualistic circumstances, so that is forever after associated in the mind with the emotion of the moment, and will consequently call up that emotion whenever it is subsequently seen. Now, I want you guys to think about, not on magical terms, okay? But think about this on life terms. Every ritual that you've ever been influenced, that you've done yourself, or that has been done to you, and the emotions that went with them. Like I said, like when you're a little baby, if you were raised in a good household, you probably had a lot of good ritualistic things and conditioning that came to you, that certain words and things mean certain things. There's a time for everything. We don't do that, or we do this, or I'm proud of you. But some people that were abused or whatever, they were conditioned that way too. And so even in their life, even when they later in their life and they find out, well, that wasn't wrong for me to think or feel that way, right? They still have a conditioned thing inside of them. This is only people, like, it works both ways, good and bad. This is why commercials work too, right? They slam you with the same freaking, they used to anyways. Now they've really kind of adapted to it. They're conditioning your mind to the symbols that you're seeing. Now, I'm not trying to get conspiratorial. I don't even think about it in that sense, like it's some big evil thing. It's just the way things work. But knowing this, you can make this work better. Let's say for example, like, maybe you want to express to somebody how much you care about them and you love them, and you just want them to know that. If you don't do it like ritualistically, like if you just tell somebody I love you every now and then or whatever, that's cool. They'll appreciate it, but they don't know it like deep down. They're not conditioned by it. But if you do it in a ritualistic way, and I know this sounds like manipulation, but it's not. It's in a good sense. I used to tell my son before he fell asleep, like right when he was in that hypnagogic state when he was little, I'd wait till like right when he was falling asleep. I love you. I love you. You're safe. If you ever need anything, you come talk to Daddy. You're safe with me. You're a good boy. I'm proud of you. Those kind of things. And I would do it enough that eventually I started seeing him kind of smile, as he was falling asleep. I wasn't trying to manipulate him, but I just wanted him to know those things. And it's the same thing when people keep, like, when people try to manipulate you. This is a form of manipulation people do to you too. They'll ritualistically condition you to feel a certain way when you do certain things. Now, some shame is healthy. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh man, if I feel shame, like that, I just don't want to feel bad about myself. Well, no one wants you to feel bad about yourself. But if you do shitty things, you should feel bad. But anyways, there's another manipulation to that too, where someone can condition you. They call it gaslighting now, but they take the opportunity every time you do something that puts them in a state of fear because you're actually authenticating. Well, they'll condition you to feel a certain thing because they don't want you authenticating, because that scares them, because they have their own issues, because you might leave or you might go whatever. And if you know who you truly are, then that, you know what I mean? We don't have to go down that road. So this whole idea of ceremony and ritual isn't like satanic or evil or what people, if you really look at it on all levels, the way this works, it's only nature. It can be good or bad. It doesn't have to be super conspiratorial, Crazy. Anyways, I get on tangents sometimes about this stuff, but so we know ritual is action, and action becomes ritual when performed with intention. So as I've pointed out elsewhere in my writings on magic, the contacts with the cosmic forces are picked up mentally by means of the use of symbols on which the imagination dwells, thus building them on the astral. And this, the mind has to be conditioned to any given abstract symbol before it can be influenced by it. And so, and she keeps saying this too to bring this home. And this conditioning is achieved by presenting the symbol to the mind under impressive ritualistic circumstances, so that is forever after associated in the mind with the emotion of the moment and will consequently call up that emotion whenever it's seen. No abstract and artificial symbols, such as the cross or the crescent, can ever become so potent to stir the emotions, nor stir them to such an intensity as the natural objects of feeling. So it is for this reason that the church superimposes the tortured figure of the Redeemer upon the bleak, the abstract symbol of the cross, and offers for our adoration the mother nursing her child. It is probably for the same psychological reason, though reversed, that Muhammad forbade all representation of natural objects in art, so that the faithful might never be led away from the strict monotheism he came to teach. The great nature-worshipping religions, however, avail themselves of the power of the natural emotion-stirring objects with a directness of appeal that is not appreciated by the sophisticated Westerner accustomed to the viewpoint inculcated by the aesthetic faith. So it just depends on there we are again, right? The East and the West, or pagan and Christian kind of views. But all she's saying is, if you pay attention, this is how they're both using it. This is why they don't agree on certain things too. So it is indisputable that there are drawbacks to the unrestricted use of powerful stimulants, and civilized countries have found it necessary to control their use, whether in the form of drugs and alcohol, or of psychological stimulants to the imagination. A stimulant is not a food. It is, on the contrary, simply a releaser of inhibitions, which enables reserves of energy to be made available. It is a very useful thing to be able to call upon one's reserves in an emergency, and may make all the difference between life and death, success and failure. But in order to be able to call upon one's reserves, one must have reserves to call upon, and this cannot be if one is constantly drawing upon them by the habitual use of stimulants. For this reason, this is getting interesting. So, for this reason, in the West, the sale of alcohol was restricted to certain hours and certain places, and psychological stimulants to the instincts were banned whenever recognized as such, though many passed unrecognized. So Christianity, by denying the right of life to the instincts and banning their stimulation, has undoubtedly made a vital contribution to culture by forcing a sublimation of primitive energies and interest into social channels. Unquestionably, such a reform was due and overdue in the pagan world to which our Lord came. But there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, and this our religious zealots are never able to realize, and no one who is in a position to form an opinion on the subject has any doubt whatever that we are suffering with our nerves today owing to the over-earnestness of St. Paul and St. Augustine some 20 centuries ago. Well, that was happening. Think about what she's saying about in the 1930s. I wonder what she would say if she saw stuff today. What India needs is a restriction in the hours and places for the display of psychological stimulants, so that her people may have energy to spare for the tasks of civilization, instead of draining themselves dry through the natural channels. And what Anglo-Saxon civilization needs is a realization that prohibition is an unworkable substitute for public house reform. It might not be thought by this that I regard what has euphemistically been termed the poor man's club as any real substitute for the home. On the contrary, it is in the homes that reform should come, and if it comes there, it will not be needed elsewhere. That is the real solution of the problem of psychological prohibition. Well, I don't think it's as bad today. Like, I still think that people are influenced psychologically on a spiritual level today now more than ever, but I don't think it's as restrictive as it used to be. No, this is by Gareth Knight. Examine what is known concerning the origin of the Greek mysteries, writes Dion Fortune in her introduction to the Circuit of Force. In support of this, she recommends Jane Harris's what is that? Prolegomena to the study of Greek religion. I don't know what that is, so I'm passing all that up. All right, so let's look at this the Dionysus rites. So in the rites of Dionysus, the ecstatic worshippers believed they were possessed by the god. This was completely foreign to the way the Greeks had previously thought about themselves and their gods, as may be seen in the epic poetry of Homer of the 9th century BC. The Greeks saw the gods as separate from and superior to man, and anyone who presumed to become like the gods would have been blasted with the divine fire of Zeus and cast into the underworld for presumptuous impiety. Well, Christianity kind of does the same thing too. The Dionysian religion came into northern Greece sometime in the 8th century BC, and originally Dionysus was the god of an isolated and unconquered mountain tribe whose reputation for brigandage and banditry lasted well into the Christian era. His rebel rout of satyrs, centaurs, and Menaids might well have been real wild men and women in the beginning rather than mythical beings. His mother, Semele, was a local earth goddess and, as bride of the local thunder god, was also known as the Thunder Smitten, as indeed the earth goddess of a mountainous region could very well have been. So a key to Dionysus' popularity was his association with the vine, the discovery of wine, and hence alcoholic intoxication. But although his original wild worshippers might have been excessive drinkers, as his influence spread over the Greek world, there came a gradual shift from the physical to the spiritual aspect of inebriation. As he had been fathered by a thunder god, he was later proclaimed to be a son of Zeus, the universal thunderer, and eventually was elevated to the ranks of the gods of Olympus, where he replaced Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, as one of the major 12. Hestia, it has been suggested, was not unduly put out by this, as she had a home in every family and city hearth throughout the land. So under the local name of Iolcus, Dionysus also found a place within the mysteries of Eleusis. You'll read about the Eleusinian mysteries a lot if you study Crowley and stuff, but the Eleusinian mysteries were originally a simple harvest festival. As ancient local goddesses began to merge, so many became identified with a common earth mother, who with the development of agriculture also embraced the qualities of a corn mother. In Jane Harrison's analysis, aspects of the goddess mirror the 4 conditions of a woman's life. The virgin maid, or Kori, as with Persephone, the nubile bride, or nymph, as many ladies of the woods and waters, the mother of, or meter, as in Demeter, and the grandmother, or Maya, as, for example, Rhea. And in some respects, they remain the same goddess. Just these 4 stages can be experienced by the same woman. Most dudes are like, I don't care about this. This is still pretty cool, though. Thus, at Eleusis, Demeter and Persephone, mother and maid, were fundamentally one goddess, but expressed under different aspects. However, in the course of time, Demeter became more and more identified with the physical corn and took to herself affairs of the upper world, such as marriage and motherhood, and mother of the harvest, while Persephone became more withdrawn into the world of the spirit as ruler of the dead and queen of the underworld. Ancient goddesses form an important background to all Greek myth and religion. A local earth mother who was mother of both the quick and the dead, and lady of wild things, played a role somewhere between that of mother and lover to any local hero, urging and inspiring him to do great deeds. And eventually, these tribal heroes became petty kings. And at Eleusis, when it was an independent city-state, the king himself was a priest of the 2 goddesses, the Meter, or the Mater, and the Kori, who became identified with Demeter and Persephone. That'd be a strange time to live in, wouldn't it? Can you imagine living in that time, like living in that kind of culture? When Athens grew in power and status and annexed Eleusis, which was only 14 miles away, it took over the Eleusinian worship as well, which it then began to transform. Athens made the Eleusinian festival one of the key points of the Attic year with 2 main developments. They promoted the old king of Eleusis into a legendary cultured hero, sent abroad by Demeter to sow seed and teach mankind the arts of agriculture. And they introduced, I can never say this right, Iolcus, a form of Dionysus as a god of the underworld and its mysteries. He had a shrine at Athens where his spring festival eventually became a focus for the drama, and at the autumn festival his image was paraded to Eleusis with great celebration. You know what this whole thing reminds me of? And I know I'm probably going to piss off some people when I say this, but what the hell was the name of that movie? The Wicker Man? Is that the name of it? Where that dude's in they're doing all their festivals and stuff, and then they sacrifice him in that tower. And he's up there. There's such a freak. I remember the first time I saw that, man, that gave me weird feelings. He's like, I believe in Jesus Christ, and they were burning him. They should never let any kid watch that movie. Like, wait till you're an adult. It's not even that crazy of a. It's not gruesome or anything. It's just weird. You get a weird feeling when you watch it. Anyways, so these celebrations included fasting, elaborate purification rites, sacrificial offerings, a ceremonial partaking of the first fruits, a mystical marriage, and the processing and revelation of sacred objects. After a procession from Athens along the seashore, the devotees entered a large building or a hall of initiation, and this was most unusual for Greek religious observance, which was generally conducted in the open. A temple was exclusively the house of God, into which only a priest might enter. At its peak, the great hall at Eleusis could contain 3,000 initiates. The precise details of the Eleusinian ceremonies have never been revealed, but it is known that at some point the Hierophant and the priestess would descend into a secret chamber for the celebration of a sacred marriage ceremony, which was probably enacted chastely and symbolically in this period. You don't know that, though. They might have had sex right there and you would have never known it. But she's saying now that it was probably just they probably just enacted it, which is probably enacted chastely. But then the Hierophant came forth and, standing in a blaze of torchlight, cried aloud that the supreme mystery was accomplished. A holy child had been born of a virgin. The final act seems to have been connected with the bringing forth a newly cut sheaf of corn and distributing ears of wheat to those present as an emblem of a new life. It seems there were no secrets given out in the terms of a creed or belief or revelation of ideas. Some have spoken of seeing the sunshine at midnight in the subterranean groves, which suggests that the initiation was essentially an experience that transcends the intellect. The mysteries of Eleusis maintained an exemplary reputation, and it was generally believed that those who had received initiation had a significant advantage over those who had not only in this world, but in the life after death. They were open to women as well as to men, and to slaves as well as to free citizens. The only bar to entry was to those who had committed murder, until at least they had undergone elaborate purification. Man, they even let slaves be initiates too. That's pretty different than a lot of the ancient mystery schools. The spring festivals at Athens, the Dionysia, where the dramatic competitions came to be held, became in effect the lesser mysteries. Only after acceptance into these was it possible to enter the greater mysteries at the autumn festival at Eleusis, 18 months later. These lesser mysteries lie at the root of theater. What began as a procession with priest leader and initiate chorus chanting hymns to Dionysus developed into a form of dialogue, and from thence into more complex dramatic forms. The priests gradually took on the role of actors, yet there remained a strong religious and magical element in Greek tragedy, for the mass actors on their high boots under long robes became vehicles for the gods and the legendary beings they portrayed. There is a thin dividing line between where ritual ends and drama begins. So what does that say? I'm going to comment on this, but I got to finish this. So the aim was to purge and purify the audience with the emotions of fear and of pity. And as the festivals developed, it became part of the tradition to follow the tragedies with satirical comedy, also in its way a purgative, but after another manner. So it is interesting to note that the word satire derives from the satyr play featuring the wilder followers of Dionysus and a less than respectful send-up of the gods of the day. The Athenian drama, as we know it from the earliest manuscripts that have survived, flowered more than 150 years after the first Dionysia, with the three great tragedians. I guess it's, what is this? Aeschylus himself, a citizen of Lucius, Sophocles, and Euripides. I can't say all this Greek stuff. And the comedic dramatist Aristophanes. Think about, like, if this is really where theater came from, and the way she's describing ritual, well, hell, I mean, we could probably watch a good drama or a movie and get the same kind of thing. The archetypes, the gods, and all the stuff speak through certain characters. They give us certain emotions. And a lot of times we watch the comedy reel after the credits, the outtakes. So despite the comparatively late date, we can learn much from the Euripides' great Dionysian drama, the Bacchae, which was written in his last year and not performed until after his death. The occultist and the psychotherapist Israel Gardi, in an essay entitled A Greek Ritual of Magic, claimed that it would be no difficult matter to recast the play into a magical ceremony, and one whose symbolism lies very close to psychoanalytic theory, with the entire mechanism of the Freudian scheme there, from repression and resistance through to the Oedipus complex. Yeah, I get what he's saying. The rational consciousness of man, represented in the drama by King Pentheus, in overstepping the legitimate confines of its powers, is torn to pieces by the repressed feminine powers as a consequence. The god himself represents the vital stream of spiritual energy, the totality of man's forces to whose service the Menaids must be dedicated. Even Aristophanes, or the frogs, contains a chorus of the Mystae of Iacchus and a hymn to Demeter as a bearer of fruits, while the clouds contain a satirical depiction of certain Orphic doctrines, wherein Socrates, as stock comic character for an otherworldly philosopher, dangles in a basket over the heads of the populace, offering to mediate between them and the higher powers represented by the clouds of metaphysical abstraction. There's a lot that can be done in a drama like that. It may be remembered in passing that the Elizabethanian magus Dr. John Dee had a great enthusiasm for the same playwright and got into a certain amount of trouble by inventing a flying Egyptian scarab for Aristophanes, Pax, that was so realistic that it was thought to be propelled by sorcery. I didn't know that. The doctrines of Orpheus came to play an increasingly important role in the religious world of the Greeks from the 7th century BC onwards, and indeed Orpheus became virtually identified with Dionysius, in spite of the fact that in many ways they were polar opposites. The all-important thing here is that they had in common was a knowledge of the mysteries of the underworld and the means of becoming identified with the gods. Dionysius, as befits one who was to introduce the possibility of spiritual birth to man, was himself twice born. His mother, Semele, once her earth goddess origins were forgotten, was said to have been the daughter of the king of Thebes and courted by no less than Zeus, the king of the gods, who visited her in human form. And this aroused the jealousy of Hera, Zeus's consort, who came to the palace in the guise of a nurse when the pregnant Semele was expecting Zeus's child. Hera persuaded Semele to insist that Zeus reveal himself to her in his true form as a god, and this she did by means of the old stratagem of holding him to his word on an open promise. Unfortunately for her, when Zeus appeared to her in all his divine glory, she was struck down as if by lightning, and her body was consumed in flames, and her shade went down to the underworld. Damn, even the female gods are ruthless. Some say a shoot of ivy appeared miraculously to screen her unborn child, winding itself around the columns of the palace. All agree that Zeus then seized the babe and concealed it in his thigh, from whence it later came to birth. As a result of this double pregnancy, Dionysus was known as Dithrambos, the twice born, once from a premature human birth and then from a divine birth. This is an epithet which came to be applied to initiates who had been born of the flesh and then of the spirit. Are you guys following this? Because what I'm hearing here is, oh, thanks, man. That's late birthday, but appreciate it. What I'm hearing is basically what she's saying is that the Dionysian plays and all the stuff that they did was really not only the beginning of one of the ancient mystery schools, but also the beginning of drama and play acting, and how that kind of corresponds to ritual in a sense where, nowadays at Golden Dawn, they do things, well, not nowadays, but recently, they do what's called god forms, where they actually invoke the gods. But I could see how this could totally affect an entire culture and turn it into one big ritual that not only teaches people this stuff, but it's pretty cool. It's a lot, though, man. It really is. And because it just keeps going, and all this stuff means something. So the child was entrusted by Zeus to Semele's sister until Hera struck the foster parents with madness. When Zeus, with the help of Hermes, changed the child, remember, they were only twice born, so changed the child into the form of a kid or a ram and placed him in the keeping of the cave nymphs of Mount Nysa, who were rewarded by being placed in the stars as the Hyades, which make up the face of Taurus, the bull. Mount Nysa has no precise location, although there are many claims as to its physical site. It is the archetypal sacred mountain. Here, the child was brought up, attended by the satyrs and other strange creatures, tutored by old Silenos, a wise and down-to-earth Falstaffian type of teacher, to whom Socrates later declared an affinity. Some said another of his attendees was Macris, or a daughter of Aristaeus, or Pan, who fed him on honey. But as he grew older, Dionysus took to wandering the mountain woods, crowned with ivy and laurel, accompanied by the nymphs, making the glades ring with joyful cries and simple musical instruments of pipes and drums. In the course of time, he discovered the vine and the art of making wine from it, and this discovery led him into extensive travels, taking the vine stock with him and accompanied by his wild rout. Their emblem was an ivy-twined staff topped with a pine cone called thyrsus, an early form of the caduceus, and they also carried swords and serpents and howling hold stones on strings known as bull roars, and were aided on occasion by wild animals. And from the mainland of Greece, he visited the islands of the Greek archipelago. He introduced the vine to Egypt, and with the Amazon women successfully fought a war against the Titans. And this was the first of many military victories, including one over the king of Damascus, whom he flayed alive for bearing his way across the Euphrates, over which he then built a bridge of ivy. He was helped by a tiger to cross the other great river, the Tigris, and eventually reached India, where he introduced the vine to the whole subcontinent, founded cities, and established laws. Now, we are talking off a time somewhat before Buddha, and the mythology may be identified with the spread of viticulture. When he eventually returned to the West, Dionysus had undergone a certain change of appearance. In place of the bearded rustic god, often depicted with horns, he was seen more often in the guise of a graceful adolescent dressed in long robes in the Lydian fashion. There was some reaction to his changed appearance. He was at first opposed by the Amazons, but he defeated them, helped in his battle with elephants, and then he had brought from India. Wait, what? He was at first opposed by the Amazons, but he defeated them, helped in his battle with elephants that he had brought from India. He then invaded Thrace, where his army was repulsed, but he escaped by plunging into the sea. The ancient goddess Rhea helped the prisoners of war to escape the inflicted madness upon the victors, whereupon Dionysus traveled on to Boeotia, where he visited Thebes. Here, as depicted in the celebrated play of Euripide, he caused the patriarchal disciplinarian king Pentheus to go mad. When the king tried to imprison him, he shackled a bull by mistake, and then, dressed in women's clothes, went up into the mountains to spy upon the Meneids and their mysteries. Here Dionysus secured him to the top of a fir tree, which the Meneids uprooted, and led by his mother Agave, fell upon him and tore him to pieces, his mother returning to the palace, brandishing his severed head. Holy hell. There's all kinds of stuff being revealed into this. I'm trying to get to the end of it before the show's over, but all of this stuff means something mystically. This whole freaking story. And I hate Greek names, especially the long ones. Why don't they call this guy this place Orchomenus? Why don't they just call it Bob or something? Anyways, at Orchomenus, 3 princesses had refused to join his revels, although he invited them to in the form of a girl. He had then changed shape into a lion, a bull, and a panther, and drove them mad. They tore their brother apart and ran into the mountains, where Hermes turned them into a bat, an owl, and a crow. In Argos, Dionysus was opposed by the hero Perseus. However, Dionysus drove all the women mad, causing them to start to devour their children. At this, Perseus built a temple in Dionysus' honor, and at some point in his travels, despite a warning from their helmsman who recognized his godhead, pirates tried to take him and sell him into slavery. But no sooner was he secured when ivy and vine tendrils sprang from the deck and enveloped the sail and the mast, and the bonds fell from Dionysus, and he turned into a lion. Wine filled the sea all around the ship, and phantoms of wild beasts appeared within to the sound of flutes. The terrified pirates jumped overboard and were turned into dolphins. This sounds like a story a kid made up, though, doesn't it? Only the helmsman pilot was spared, and lived to tell the tale. You ever talk to a kid and they just like, tell me a story, and they just keep telling, and it never gets to the end, you know? It's still pretty cool, though. On the island of Naxos, Dionysus came upon the princess Ariadne, the daughter of the king Minos of Crete, who had helped the hero Theseus to find his way through the labyrinth of the Minotaur by means of a thread. Theseus had deserted her, but Dionysus consoled her, providing his status as a god by throwing her bridal diadem into the stars, where it remains as Corona Borealis, the northern crown. Some versions of the story say that the marriage took place after Ariadne's death, so that the 2 ceremonies were later celebrated in her honor and bewailing her death, and the other celebrating her subsequent divine marriage, a combination of rites that has distinct initiatory resonances. Having established his worship throughout the world and been accepted into the Olympian heaven, where he sat at the right hand of Zeus as one of the 12 great ones, Dionysius descended to the underworld, and here, with a gift of myrtle, or a phallus made of fig wood, he induced Persephone to release his mother from the realm of the dead. Similarly ascended with him to the temple of Artemis at Troezen, where Dionysus changed her name to Thyone, which means ecstatically raging, the condition of many of his Meneiad followers. Having made her immortal, he took her up with him to live with the gods. In this we have another initiatory sequence. You got to be kidding me. So much for the general body of Dionysius myth, some of it very wild indeed. That was taken over and adapted by the Orphic movement. And we're not going to get into the cult of Orpheus, because that's probably another 10 pages. But this is the kind of, excuse my French, but this is the kind of stuff that you had to decipher to figure out this whole initiatory process, this whole marriage of the bridegroom, you know, the body and the soul, the physical body and the subtle body, and how these forces come together and how they birth a new child, or where you're reborn, you know, thrice born. But in this case, it only talks about being born twice. But in the end, you kind of get the gist of it. It's a lot, man. Imagine. I mean, I'm sure there are people that tell the story better. Like, imagine growing up in ancient Greece as a child, and your mother would read these stories to you. And this isn't just nursery rhymes. These stories were a part of what they really believed spiritually. And so these children were impressed upon by all of these Greek mythologies and mysteries, and it impressed upon their subconscious. But it makes you wonder, like, how much did that affect our culture? And I'm thinking the same way Dion Fortune's thinking, is like, how much did that really start the whole ceremony of drama? I wonder, the whole Dionysian stuff. It might. I don't know. It would be weird to say, you know what, all the movies and plays and all the stuff that we watch today has everything to do, if we traced it back, like on a timeline, actually initiated and started from the ideas of Dionysus and what went on with that. That'd be interesting. So this book, like, if you want to get it, and I'll probably pick through it a little more, but I think it has like the best stuff of Dion Fortune, and I think Gareth Knight did a good job by picking apart some stuff and like putting it all together. Some of the deeper mysteries about all of this stuff. It's called The Circuit of Force by Dion Fortune. Damn, I missed you guys. It was fun tonight. I could keep going, but man, the Cult of Orpheus, that's a long one. Let's see how long it is, actually. Yeah, because after she goes through the Orpheus thing, Dion starts to tell you what it all means. And I do want to read that part. Dionysius, as the twice born, the discoverer of the divine and the divine inebriation, represented the inner forces and divine potential of the human individual. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that tomorrow night, and then we'll let Dion Fortune tell us, what's it all mean? Good stuff. Right. It's come to my attention too that there's three ways that you can support the show. One is just donations, but there YouTube, you can support like Ari did with YouTube. There's you can become a member, you can become a patron, or you can sign up as a member at ltvpodcast.shop. It's come to my attention that a few of the people like Dan and a couple other people that signed up on the website can't access the guided audios and path workings that I have on there for free, like you can on Patreon. You can, like, if you sign up as, I think it's the second tier membership in Patreon, you can get all that stuff for free. So I have to put those on YouTube for the YouTube members too, on a certain level. And the reason why I'm doing it on three places, like YouTube, website, and Patreon, is that a way everybody can access it however the hell they want to, wherever they want to. But it's come to my attention that the ones on the website can't access it, so I will work on fixing that. So thanks to who is it? Yeah, El Naturel for showing me that, and I'll get that fixed. But just remember, the easiest way to do it, I guess, is through YouTube Super Chat. But remember, they take a chunk, but it's super easy. So we, at least YouTube's doing something right, making it easy for people. But if you can't support the show, just tell everybody about how much fun you have hanging out with us here every night, and so that they can come over and at the very least subscribe and hang out with us if they're into this kind of stuff. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. See you in the Discord. Night, y'all. Sweet dreams.
Difficult not to feel a little bit disappointed.